women who don't have children don't typically regret it,
and she goes on to say that women that have kids sometimes regret it. And I would dare say that we don't regret the children, we regret the situation that created the children.
There is a conversation going on TikTok. Women with children and women without children. That is child-free by choice women and parents. Who regrets later on? Who when it comes to probably later in life, who has the most regrets in their decision? You know, do the parents regret having the child, or do child-free by choice women regret taking out their womb or trying to choose a child-free life? Who on the long run regrets having children?
I met a guy last year and we were just casually dating, and one of the things he said to me was, if I had met you sooner, I would have given you some babies. And I was like, dude, I didn't have kids because I didn't want to have kids, not because I didn't meet great men. I personally did not want to have kids, so I didn't have them. I was never the person that was like chomping at the bit to have a baby. That was not me. Even if I got married at 28, I had my first child at 40. The doctors, when they told me at about 35 that I couldn't have kids, I was like, okay, that's fine. And then I got pregnant at 40. And I often think back on my relationship and I said, I think that was the beginning of the end of my marriage, because having a child brought so much extra responsibility and stress to the relationship, stress that we were not accustomed to because we had been child free for so long. And then I had to quit my job because I got super sick, and I had a super demanding job. I had to quit my job in order to be home for the kid, which I was okay with. But then my ex-husband just wakes up one day and decides that he doesn't want to be married to me anymore. And now I am a single parent in my 40s, something that I work actively against. So I never regretted having my son, but I look at the irony of I am a single mother in my 40s after I spent my 20s avoiding that situation like the plague. And it's not lost on me that my ex-husband now dates women with no children. Yet here I am, the one that made all of the sacrifices, made decisions with him to have a child, then made the sacrifices that came along with parenting said child, and then he just ups and leaves and like, this shit is too hard, I don't want to do it no more. And then goes off in the world and then find other women that do not have children. Yet here I am, still with the responsibility of raising another human. So I never regret it. I love my kid. Oh my God, he's like the best, smartest, funniest, like changed my life. Amazing. I never regretted having him, but the irony of the situation is not lost on me. That I had a child with a man that then decided I don't want to do this shit no more, and peace out, and left, and now only date child-free women.
Hey beautiful people, how you are doing today? My name is Maria David. First of all, I'm going to share a video for you all to watch. This video shows statistics of who regrets later on. So kindly sit down, relax, and watch while we talk about the video.
So a lot of you have been asking me to provide information and proof about this emerging data that I talked about that shows that women who don't have children don't typically regret it, and that women who do have children sometimes do regret it. It's not really brain science, I mean, if you think about it. And I know it blows people's minds because from what I can tell, being a woman without children on the internet, it seems like about 80% of the world population thinks that women like me are going to be in a hellscape that we cannot even possibly imagine after 40. But I am well into my 40s and there's no hellscape. But for those of you who didn't want to go look it up yourself, I will show you right here. This article is a really great source because it kind of puts everything together in one space so you don't have to go to a million different sites. It's pushing back on this idea that women without children will regret their decisions one day. Here it is explicitly stating that New research suggests that people without children, people who chose not to have children, do not regret their decisions. It's right there in print. Again, reiterating, people who are child-free, they're all pretty happy with their decisions. We found no evidence that older child-free adults experience any more life regret than older parents. In fact, older parents were slightly more likely to want to change something about their life. Then it goes on to list all of the studies that have already suggested that this is the case. It seems that data tends to trend toward the people who have children are the ones who regret things in their life more than people who didn't have children. And you can see all of that right here. This also references a 10-year-old Gallup survey, which says that 7% of American parents older than 45 wouldn't have any kids if they had to do it over again. I would guess that that number is even higher if we had a society that allowed people to talk about their honest feelings around parenthood. And there are even Facebook groups like this that are growing in popularity. And yes, this is real. So there you go. There's the start of your research journey. If you want to learn more, you know where to find it.
When you tell people you want to be child-free by choice, you don't want to have children for the rest of your life, people tend to start judging you and tell you you're going to regret your decision at the end of the day. But now statistics is showing that women that choose not to have children and women that decide to have children, the ones that had their child or children later in life, they tend to regret their decision, and if they can take back that time, they will not even bother having children at all. So now, who is winning this case? I'd like to know what you all think down in the comment section.
If you have been asking me to provide information and proof about this emerging data that I talked.
I've long suspected that this was true, that you're more likely to regret the decision to have kids than you are to regret the decision to not have kids. But today's the day I found out that there's research demonstrating that. Go watch her entire video and follow her. She's making great content, and if you're like me, you'll probably like her. The decision to have kids is a decision unlike other decisions you have in life that is especially difficult for 3 reasons. First, it's a binary choice. You either have kids or you don't have kids. I mean, you could say I'm open to step parenting or foster parenting or whatever, but generally speaking, you only have 2 choices and you kind of have to commit to one of them. There's no middle ground. The second reason that it's so complicated is that there's a ticking clock to the decision. If you haven't made the decision by your early to mid 40s, the decision's going to be made for you. But the third reason it's such a precarious choice is because you cannot undo it either way. Virtually every other big life decision can be undone. You can undo your marriage, you can undo the city you chose to live in, you can undo the career choices that you've made. You're never going to undo your status as a parent. Even if you check out and become a deadbeat parent, you're still a deadbeat parent. You still don't get to go back to zero where you're not a parent. You still have to deal with the grief and tumult of being the deadbeat parent and the harm that you caused by virtue of that choice. So this is all to say that in terms of all the major life decisions that you're going to be making, this decision more than any other should be the most carefully considered. And a part of that careful consideration is knowing which decision you're more likely to regret. And the entire story that we have been telling around which decision you're more likely to regret has been wrong. The number of people who gave me unsolicited advice in my life that I might regret not having kids is ridiculous. I have never heard somebody tell another person that they were going to regret having kids, when that's actually the more likely cause of regret. I guess that's not true. My childhood best friend, after she had a couple kids, told me, she's like, knowing you well, I think you would probably regret having kids. She said, please don't be offended. It's not that I don't think you would be good at it. I just don't think you would like it. And I was like, oh, I'm not offended. You're right. Anyway, remember how we just recently did that thing where we made the data around marriage sort of common knowledge? Every woman going buck wild on this app sharing the stats that show that marriage benefits men and harms women. Yeah, we need to do that for this too. We need to do that for the choice to have children as well. We need to make it common knowledge that if there is regret to be had, it's more likely to be had in the direction of having kids instead of not having kids.
Women who don't have children don't typically regret it, and that women who do have children some.
As a child-free woman, I could have told you this without a study, that it was likely the case. But I am so glad that we finally have some definitive proof that there is less regret among child-free women than those who have children. I'm not glad that people who choose to have children, women especially, have more regrets. That's doesn't bring me joy. What brings me joy is that so often I get basically mocked on this app for talking about my child-free experience and saying like, hey, you're going to die alone, you're going to have regret and all this other bull crap, to be frank. Or I always get the question of, what are you going to do if you regret it? I'd rather regret not having a child than regret bringing a child into this world, affecting my life and their life, first of all. But second of all, so many women on this app that are child-free have shared time and time again that we feel nothing but joy when we look back on our decisions, and it is not something we regret. How can you regret living for your truth, putting yourself first, making decisions that empower you, especially when it comes to if you don't want children? Now, if you want them, power to you. Like those, like same thing goes. Like if you made the decision, you really want kids, and you make that empowered decision, you do something that speaks to your truth, you'll likely have less regret. But I'm so sick of this concept of, oh, women who don't have children are regretful, sad creatures. It's not the case. We are living our lives to the fullest, and every single day we are living for ourselves, not in regret.
And people who chose not to have children do not regret their decisions. It's right there.
Thank you, Yil, for making this video. And I so completely agree with the choice to have children or the choice to not have children should be such a conscious choice. And the more I really believe that the reason why people in general are happier with the choice not to have children is because it was such a conscious choice, because you have to go against the grain. You have to kind of separate yourself from the mass consciousness of like, okay, this is just what we do. And I think so the choice to have children is often so unconscious. It's often so just based on biology. It's based on society. It's based on this mass consciousness, or this is just what we do. This is what you do when you have a partner. This is where you come from. So in my classes, I pay so much attention to this conscious choice to have a child, and to really go beyond all that programming, to really come to yourself and to from there feel, do I want a child or do I not? Which means that you bring in a soul, that it's not just like you just have a tiny mini me, but it's a complete intelligent soul that you bring in, that you open up to, and that you can have a relationship with even before conception. And when you come to this place, and when you go through all these decisions for yourself and really feel into them and let it really like kind of emerge from your soul, then you come to this decision, then either yes or no to have a child, then what happens is that energies start to work a whole different way. So yes, if you choose not to, it will feel very satisfying. It will, because it's a really deep choice. And if you choose to have children, you send out another signal. So what happens with so many births is that this choice of having children is very unconscious, and you send out a very distorted image energy, and that's the energy that you get. So a lot of women get children that they don't feel connected to, that they're like, who are these beings? And that's because it never was a conscious choice. And I think this is so important in these times that we're living in, that we come to this place of really, really taking the time of letting this answer emerge of the choice to have children. And when you choose to very consciously to have a child, then you attract a very conscious soul, and that is very satisfying.
People without children, people who chose not to have children, do not regret their decisions.
I'd also bet a very large sum of money that the number of parents that are willing to openly say that they regret having kids is underwhelming. And that's because society would overall look at them like they're monsters. But we're not ready to talk about that yet.
So a lot of you have been asking me to provide information and proof about this emerging data that I...
Having a child is a bit like getting a tattoo on your face. You would want to be really, really sure it's what you want. But many people don't really think about it that hard. They kind of just go into it going, it's what you do, it's kind of the done thing, I'm a certain age, etc., etc. I don't have kids, but my best friend always said to me, until you want it with your whole heart and you're 100% all in and ready to sacrifice every single day, don't do it. Because even if it's what you wanted, since you were a small child yourself, it is the hardest thing you will ever do. And she is a parent, she's a fantastic parent. And I think the people who have chosen not to have children, or not to have children for a time, depending on, how they're going, have probably thought about it and thought about the actual ins and outs and reality of it more than people who go, oh, well, it's just what you do, and don't really think about it at all. And if you go back and you ask, so I had a lot of very honest older women in my family. If you go back and ask someone of your grandparents' generation or even your parents who didn't have as much choice as we have now, they didn't have the financial freedom that women have now, they didn't have the ability to kind of live independently outside of marriage, they didn't have family planning the way that we have now, many of them would say they wouldn't have kids if they could choose now. If they could live now as a child-free woman who could, work and have nice things and have a good life. Not that you can't have a good life with children, you can. A lot of them would choose that. Many women back then didn't have a choice. So yeah, it's a really interesting statistic. It's a really interesting video around, turns out most of the people who actively choose that they don't want to be a parent don't regret it. And if you've ever seen Seth Rogen's interview about this, it's really good. So yeah, perfectly valid choice. Choosing to be a parent, choosing not to be a parent. We actually have those choices now, which is great.
So a lot of you have been asking me to provide information and proof about this emerging data that I talked.
I would love to see the data on how many of those parents that they interviewed that said they regretted having their children had more than one child versus the people that only have one child. So my husband and I have been in this years-long discovery about whether or not we should have a child or not. And one of the things that I seem to be finding anecdotally between my friends is that women who have multiple children are significantly more overwhelmed and tend to quote unquote regret the decision to have children more than those that just have one child. So if you're watching this and you have children, let me know if you just have one child or multiple children and how you feel about that decision. And I also understand that regretting having children doesn't mean that you hate your kids. I get it. You can love your kids and still wish that your life was different. I'm not judging that at all. So yeah, I need to know, one child, multiple children, or no children.
The people who have children are the ones who regret things in their life more than people who.
I am very curious if there is a discrepancy between men and women regretting having children. I love my kids. I always wanted to have kids. I was always planning on having kids, but I regret these circumstances surrounding first getting pregnant. We had been married a couple of years, and just going off the fact that I was working full-time, he was not, and yet I was still expected to do all the household chores and the emotional labor, it became very clear very quickly that if I wanted kids, I was probably not going to be able to also have a career because he was not going to be any help whatsoever. So I started pushing back the date of when we were going to have kids. I was like, you know what, let's give it some time. We've got many, many years before we actually need to make this decision. I want to get my career underway. And that didn't work for him. And so he actually removed my decision making from that and just got me pregnant. But one of the arguments we used to have over and over again that I tried so many times to get him to understand is that if we didn't have kids, his life would not have changed one bit. He'd have done the exact same things. He'd have gone along the exact same path. But if we hadn't had kids, my life would be completely different. I would not be the same person if we had not had children. Unfortunately, for a lot of American men, they're not hands-on parents. And even during their downtime, they go golfing and leave their kids with their wife to deal with over the weekends. And that is not the case for women. For most mothers, our entire life revolves around taking care of those kids and making sure their needs are met. I've seen a lot of Am I the Asshole videos of these guys saying they're upset that their girlfriend, wife didn't change her mind and decide to have kids because they thought for sure she was going to, because for them it's not going to affect it. And some of these guys even talk about coercing their wives into having kids or tricking their wives into getting pregnant and then being angry that these women changed. Because most men don't understand the gravity of what it is to bring a human into this world. If they are thinking of anything or any repercussions, they are thinking of the financial repercussions of it. They're not actually thinking through what it is to raise and be responsible for a whole human being. And when those human beings show up and aren't just like a pet that you can, set aside for much of your day and not really put a lot of time into, they become extremely inconvenienced and even angry sometimes. But they dump it on the woman in their life and don't actually take responsibility.
That women who don't have children don't typically regret it, and that women who do have children...
My name is Vix Aguilera, I'm 49 years old and I am child-free by choice, and I'm going to say some stuff in this video that might be surprising to you. First of all, I'm sat in my garden enjoying the sunshine with my nominated children, my doggo. So I think this research raises a really interesting point and worth definitely watching the whole thing. Now, I wanted to talk about something that may be a little bit surprising to people that know me, is that I think that personally, if you are taking really specific interest in the world of being child-free or having children and you're getting easily offended and really roped into this, I think quite frankly, you just need to really get a life, because I'm child-free and it's never really been something I've massively thought about. Obviously, I made the decision not to have children. I was married for a long time and it was something that at the time we both decided we didn't want. As things went on, it was a decision I was never unhappy with, and obviously that's my personal experience. Now, I would never, ever try and persuade anyone not to have children, nor would I try to persuade them to have children. It is a choice. That is what a choice means. And that choice is personal to that person and their experience with life. And if you're the sort of person that enjoys watching people regret a decision or takes pleasure from it, then let's be honest, you're not a very nice person. Now, I'm not trying to say that these people that have done this research like that or anything. No, they're just doing research on something, that's fine. But I think it's a really important point to raise. And I'm going to tell you a little story which I think the world of social media could take note of right now in this ever-changing world. I went to a Church of England girls' school back in the 1980s. Yes, that's how old I am. And I had an incredible teacher called Mr. Oxenbridge, who was a religious education teacher. Now, I am atheist, and I decided that a few years before I finished school. Mr. Oxenbridge used to take us around to churches, synagogues, mosques, cathedrals, and he taught us to be tolerant of all religions. And one thing that actually that taught me was at the very end of my school time, I had to write an essay, I believe, something like why God existed. And I actually wrote it on why I felt God did not exist. And I still passed. And he told me that the reason I passed was because at no point during the essay did I try and convince the reader of my opinion. I stated what I believed, but I didn't try and convince. And I think that's something the world of social media, especially right now, needs to kind of think about, is that you can think what you want in here. If you are not hurting anyone, including yourself, your thoughts are your own, you can think what you like, but that doesn't mean you have the right to convince or tell other people what to think. Healthy discussion is very different to enforcing your opinion on someone else and trying to convince them that you are right and they are wrong. There is often no right and wrong. The world isn't that black and white. And yeah, I would love to have a little part 2 on this, so come back.
About this emerging data that I talked about that shows that women who don't have children don't typically...
So my part 1 on this was about why I think we need to be a little bit more tolerant and why we need to lose this thing of trying to convince everyone around to our opinion. You know, why are we so interested? It's great to have healthy discussion. It's great to have a space where child-free people can feel just as valid as people that have got children. That's fine. But also, I think the important or the interesting thing that it raises for me is that in a lot of my friendship circles, and I have to be honest, I don't have a huge amount of friends with children. I have friends which have got a lot older children. I'm not really great with young children. I don't really get it. It's not really how I would choose to spend my time. I've never liked babies, and no thank you. Puppies all day long, babies no thanks. So yeah, maybe I'm a weirdo, I don't know, but that's my life and I'm happy with it, and I don't need to convince anyone else or explain myself to them. So is what I say. Yeah, I live in a very sweary house as well, so I don't think children would do very well here. But the biggest thing I've come across where I've found people have regretted, and I think this is the reason why, is that in life nothing is guaranteed. We know that. Your job's not guaranteed. You know, the only thing you can guarantee really, what they say, is death and taxes. And I think often when we make decisions in life, I know from personal experience, when I've made the decision to get a dog, I take that very seriously. I'm a very committed person. I'm going to be around for that dog's entire life, give them whatever they need. You know, I've got 8 of them now, had 9 until recently. Sadly, one of them died recently, which was just awful. And, you know, I'm a very committed person and I see things through. However, I see a lot of dog owners that aren't. I see a lot of people that get a dog on a whim. And I'm pretty sure that because there are people like that exist, there are people that get pregnant and have kids in exactly the same way, on a whim, because they think it's the right thing at the time, because everyone else is doing it. Now, again, I'm not criticising that, because that's your life, that's your decision. You've got to make those choices, and that's down to you. But also, you are the only one who's going to regret it. So, how does that matter what anyone else thinks? It doesn't. It's down to you. And the other point to this is that what I'm trying to say is that there are no guarantees in life. So I think often we make a decision with all, the best will in the world, believing that what we're doing is the right thing. The problem is children are permanent, generally, that you can't just give them back. People will rehome a dog like that. I've seen it happen millions of times. They get a dog and then it becomes too inconvenient, too annoying, they give it back. Generally, they're not going to be able to do that with kids. Yeah, okay, you can say that people can give children into foster care, whatever, but generally it's not the done thing. It's pretty difficult to do, I would imagine. So you make a decision at the time, you're in a relationship, everything seems to be working, or perhaps you're in a relationship, it's not working, so you think having a kid is the solution. Whatever the situation is, I think at that time you probably make that decision and it feels right, but you don't know what your life's going to be like in 10, 15 years. And I was never prepared to take that chance, and that's why I'm happy with the decision I've made. And I think that's probably why a lot of people aren't so happy with the decision they've made, because their life has changed so unrecognized.
It's not always very good to force your opinion on someone, and if you choose to be child-free by choice, you have your own reasons, and I feel like people should respect women that decide not to have children and to go childless for the rest of their lives. Then when you decide to have a child, then this is for you as well. As a parent, you know that you cannot undo whatever you've done already. You can have it already and it's going to stay with you for the rest of your life. So before making that decision, it's always very, very advisable for you to think twice and look at if you really want it, because at the end of the day, so you are not going to regret your decision. Not regretting the child itself, but regretting having those children. So now, but when it comes to child-free by choice, I feel like I don't know why people always try to attack people that are child-free by choice. When I go to TikTok and I see videos of women that are child-free by choice coming to say how they're enjoying their lives, how they are free, they can travel around, there's nobody to disturb them, they're basically just living their life and happy. People like parents will come and be like, oh, you're just being proud, or you're just showing off, or like they're just trying to show off something that is not true. You look at it the other way. When a woman have a child and she start posting it, oh, I have a baby, I just gave birth, in a pregnancy journey, sharing all of that, what do we call that? Should we say that she's just proud or she's just showing off? No, it's something that you enjoy doing, something that you're proud of, something that is not basically a show off. It's just something of real, it's like just your life that you're sharing for people. So I don't see why people like to censor people that are child-free by choice. They just decide to censor them and be like, you guys should just shut up because you're enjoying your life because you're child-free. Doesn't mean that you should tell everybody that you're enjoying your life. Yes, they have to let women know that you can have a choice to stay child-free, or you can have a choice for you to have a child. And if you say child-free, doesn't mean that your life is going to be miserable. They need to let people know that, and that is one thing parents should actually stop doing, And another thing I feel like parents does is, most people that have children, one thing they do is, when you don't have child and you feel like you want to be child-free, they will talk you into having a child or having a child or 2 or 3, and once you already have that child, then the next they'll tell you, now you have it, now you already know how it is, that is how we are managing. Like, they don't really tell you the real truth of what you're really going in for until you're there. So when you're there, that will start telling you, okay, you're welcome to the club, this is how we do it, yeah, yada yada yada. They're not really open up. They won't open up to you and tell you this is how it is. That's what parents does to people that have not given birth. They don't open up to you. But people that are child free by choice, they let you know this is the pros and cons, these are things you're going to face. They let you know, like, they open it up for you, and they let you see what you're going to enjoy, and at the end of the day, what you might not enjoy at the end of the day. And people are entitled to their decisions, their opinion, wherever they want to live their life. If a woman decides to be child free, or if a man decides to be child free, probably they've thought about it and they'll be like, okay, this is what I want for myself, and then let it be. Everybody's not going to have a child. Okay, and now statistics is even showing that women that decide to have child, or parents that have child, they tend to regret their life decisions later on. And if you ask them again if they should go back and have that child, they'll tell you no, they want to be child free. So now, who is winning this case? I would say the child free by choice women. They shouldn't stop what they're actually bringing up on the internet, trying to make people see that yes, you can be child free and be happy, and you might not have regrets. You might have regrets, but it is not the way people see it. And yeah, you can also live your life even without a child and be happy regardless. And yeah, that's my thoughts about this particular topic, and thank you all so much for sticking around to this point. I hope you enjoyed this one. Don't forget to like and share and subscribe and all of that good stuff, and of course I'll see you all in my next video. Bye.